So, now picture yourself in a 1950s America. You're about 10, maybe 12 years old in Los Angeles. So it's getting close to your bedtime, and on your nightstand is a pile of science fiction pulp magazines. And as you're in bed reading the latest issue with your lamp on under the covers, you glance at the alluring titles like Astounding Stories, Wonder Stories, Amazing Stories, and you glance over the flimsy covers of those pulps, and you see that there's images of alien encounters, of big brawny men saving the always damseled in distress women, of gigantic elaborate machines titled time travel. Now, some might argue that we've just done that we've gone to a particular point in time just using our own imaginations today. Now, although this idea is whimsical and romantic, we haven't done so, not fully. And as we know today, the invention of a time machine is still not relevant in our day and age. So today, I would like to reveal to you the many influences science fiction has had in technology. Now, being a science fiction geek, studying science fiction literature here at Fullerton College, and watching many X-Files episodes with my mom haphazardly watching alongside as a kid, I think I have some credibility in this topic. Now, many of us, with the exception of few, use the very gadgets and gizmos that were presented in early science fiction literature and in early and modern science fiction film and TV series. But before we get to the technology part, I want to kind of briefly talk about the origins of science fiction literature. So today I'll be discussing the origins of science fiction literature and the technological inventions that have been influenced by science fiction. So, the definite origins of science fiction are usually contested among scholars and science fiction devotees, but I want to touch upon two primary key authors, and that is French novelist Jules Verne and British author H.G. Wells. Now, both of these authors are deemed as the fathers of science fiction literature, according to the Wesleyan Anthology of Science Fiction. Now, Jules Verne popularized a 19th century brand of hard science fiction in a series he called The Voyages Extraordinaires. And H.G. Wells has captivated the minds of young boys and girls with such titles like The Time Machine and War of the Worlds, which have both become motion picture films. So, although the time machine, again, has not been an invention that has become reality, and other things like hoverboards, jetpacks, and flying cars still don't grace us in our day and age, there are some technology that we use in our everyday life that we don't really know that has been influenced by science fiction. So, now that I briefly kind of went over the origins of science fiction literature and some of the inventions that have not become a reality, I want to talk about some of the inventions that have come to fruition with the help of science fiction. So, the World Wide Web. Most of us use it every day, and I'm sure several of us have used it several times today before class. Either to run our daily apps like Facebook, type up what we're doing on Twitter, or just seeing what our friends have posted on Instagram. Tim Berners-Lee, most often credited to the invention of the web, according to Robin Burks, writer of Device, states that he was fascinated with a short story from science fiction author Arthur Lee Clarke. And the short story is basically about a network of computers that are all interrelated and at one point become like thinking autonomously for themselves. And although our computers today don't necessarily think or act for themselves yet, it's interesting to kind of see Clarke's prediction of this in the 1960s and what it would have done to us in the future. Things like the mobile phone, something that is probably either in our pockets right now or in our hands, is something that we use every day, and it's so part of our common lives. We can't really think of a day without our cell phone nowadays. Has been influenced by science fiction. Time magazine released an article of the best inventions, and they mentioned Martin Cooper, who is cited to being the inventor of this device, as they cite him citing the inspiration for the mobile device from Star Trek. So if any of us are Star Trek fans, we've seen Captain Kirk speaking to a little handheld device, and that's where he got his inspiration to make the mobile phone. And even things like touchscreen technology, which is relatively new in our day and age, seems almost ubiquitous to every handheld device or computers that we own today. But as seen in the Star Trek Next Generation, in the 80s, they were already kind of fiddling with this, with these ideas. Lastly, computer tablets. So similar to the PADD, or Personal Access Display Device, that comes out in Star Trek Next Generation, our computer tablets now do what they did in the show. So in the show, the PADDs were used to access databases and to enter logs, and those are some of the things that we do today with our computer tablets. So you can see the parallels that science fiction has been influenced through technology. Now, even Steve Jobs, when he released his keynote for the first iPad, showed a short clip of the new Star Trek film on the iPad, which was kind of cool because it poked fun of, but it also showed those parallels of iPad and PADD. I kind of wanted to run a short video clip of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, where we'll see in the film some sort of computer tablets.
Capable of error. Hal, despite your enormous intellect, are you ever frustrated by your dependence on people to carry out actions?
Not in the slightest bit. I enjoy working with people.
So as we see, they're eating kind of on their tablets, and this was in the late 60s. So this was before the iPads. This was before Star Trek: The Next Generation, and we can kind of see those predictions already coming out and then later becoming a reality. So today I've talked about the origins of science fiction literature. I've also touched upon some of the technological inventions that have become a reality thanks to science fiction. And I just kind of wanted to leave you with the notion that the realms of fiction and science do influence our daily lives daily, but we don't necessarily need a time machine to change the course of history, because we're doing so with the various technologies that we've seen come throughout. Thank you.
Ooh, let's pick a random name here. Oh, here's my list of people who are in class today. Nick P. Tell us what you thought.
Okay. Overall, right from the beginning, I thought the attention device was really intriguing, because it really made me want to go home and I don't know, read a book now, like a science fiction book. You were talking about how science fiction has affected our modern world now, and that seemed really clear to me from the beginning. I got what you were trying to say, and then you laid out your points pretty effectively, I felt. Throughout the speech, you had really good kind of hooking things, I guess. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I was always really interested in what you were saying. I mean, it wasn't ever really boring to me. I think with the cards that you had, you focused a little bit on those, a little bit more than maybe you should have, but it was minor. Overall, I thought it was a really good speech. The visual aids were even really useful, including the clip. It was really short and kind of concise. I don't really have anything negative to say about it, but that's just me. Overall, I thought it was really good.
That's just him.
That's just me.
I know who's got the negative stuff to say, that old guy sitting in the back here. There's not a lot of negatives. There are a lot of things that you do in the speech that are pretty effective. I think, let's start with the delivery issues. I didn't notice that the cards were that big a deal. I thought you did a good job speaking to the audience for the most part. You went to the cards when you needed to. Maybe a little bit at the beginning when you're doing your visualization. I think that you could just get by with the visualization and maybe not even have to make a reference to those cards. When you cite the sources, I think that makes sense that you have to do that, and that was fine. I thought that the visuals were integrated into the speech pretty effectively. I'm trying to remember because I thought of when you started talking about it. I thought of the almost exact same scene that you showed us, and it seemed to me like there was a section in the movie where he actually moves the tablet around on the table when he sits down, or maybe even he carries it and sets it down on that. And that, I think, might have made it a little bit easier for people to see, because otherwise it just looks like they're sitting there at the table and they just got a TV in there from the picture that we see. If you had the other part, that's such a minor quibble on this that I don't want you to worry about it. Just, you know what I'm talking about. It would have been easier for people to say, oh yeah, that's a tablet. That's a tablet from 1968. You know, so it's an idea that people had from 4 decades ago that only now are we getting around to having, in that kind of sense. So, you know, it's not that they don't predict the future. I was thinking, for instance, you mentioned H.G. Wells and Jules Verne, and some of the things that they talked about. Well, what are the technologies that they foresaw that later became so important? Obviously, the submarine thing and even nuclear power would be issues that would come along with that, or getting energy from different sources. The time travel thing is maybe a little bit specious, you know, because we haven't quite gotten there yet, although Einstein has postulated about those kinds of ideas. So you could talk about how, you know, physicists and scientists were inspired by the writings of people who were doing fiction. I like that. It does seem like we jump almost 100 years to more contemporary kinds of times. It's Arthur C. Clarke. I'm 90% certain, not Arthur Lee Clarke. You know, there might be an Arthur Lee Clarke, but I'm sure you're talking about Arthur C. Clarke. Just as another one of those minor little things, you know, that we're going to jump on. Because after all, I'm the negative guy, apparently.
You're real.
You know, like I said, I thought everything that you did was pretty solid. I didn't see anything that jumps out at me that is problematic per se, and a lot of things that are pretty good. All right, thank you very much. You guys want to feel good about yourselves for the weekend?
So what you mean we don't go home?
Well, yeah. First, we're going to get out of here early, which is way too. I can't.